Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are finishing up the work week on a Friday with 5 games in the NBA. We both think it's a little bit small. We like those big Friday night slates, but there still are a few games that we like on here. So we've got a couple games for you and our player props video as we bring you each and every weekday. So like and subscribe to that page. Also head to thelines.com. That's where you can check out all of our great written content all season and use our odds finder tool on there. That's where we give you guys the best odds available to you from all those sports books giving you NBA bets this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 5-game slate and then talk about our first game. The Dubs are hosting the Raptors.
Yeah, and we also do a video on this first one. The Bucks are -7.5 at Pacers, total of 237 there. Of course, Halliburton is still out for Indy. Then we got Memphis -3 at Minnesota, always a rivalry game when those two meet. That is also a 237 total. Cavs made quick work of the Rockets here on Thursday night, and they're in a pick'em at the Thunder. Should be a good one to watch. Tough to predict, I think. Magic +7 at the Heat with a 218 total. And then, Raptors open +6. It's now +5 as people are jumping on that a little bit. And the total's standing pretty steady at 229.5, which definitely seems too low regardless of the opponent when you come to the Chase Arena here and face the Warriors, the way they've been able to put up points and the way they've been pretty inconsistent defensively down the stretch. I mean, you called this team an enigma. I won't argue with you there, but I think I know a little bit more about what the Raptors are. And I know they got OG Anunoby back from a brief absence and put the clamps on Sacramento, which is a great offense, but it's a completely different challenge. This is like the number one half-court offense in the league against the worst half-court offense in the league in Toronto. But the Warriors are playing freewheeling, undisciplined basketball in transition. And I think the Raptors will have no problem getting out in the open court and getting points that way. They're actually a better defensive team on the road as Toronto, but they're 28th in transition D in fast break efficiency. Bottom 10 in giving up free throw attempts. Golden State is bottom 5 in that department at home, and really struggling to guard the 3-point line lately, allowing 43% in their last 3. So I think even with OG back, I mean, he's known as like the best ISO defender, right? So that's almost a moot point when you play the Warriors. It's like, well, they're not going to ISO on anybody. It's going to be, again, great ball movement. I mean, I do look for Toronto. I said like that freewheeling style getting out on the floor. Warriors continue to turn the ball over at a high clip, right? So that's points off turnovers is what Toronto needs to make their hay. Also second chance points, which is, all these categories you put in here, fast break points. Golden State's bottom 10 in January. And that's why they haven't really been able to cover as home favorites. So that's why they've surprisingly not been able to pull away from teams, even with Steph Curry back when they were looking good without him. I kind of expect that to stop, though. I expect the Warriors to pull away in this game for sure. I just don't think Toronto has the firepower to keep pace. I've talked about how they limit stars, guys with high usage like Siakam. Don't necessarily expect him to have a great game against Draymond and company. And there's just a little superior depth and much, much superior shooting from the Warriors, who shoot at a higher clip at home. You know, the big knock on Toronto is that they don't have that perimeter spacing, and that, they need to look for something at the trade deadline to shore up that roster and get something, or to just start rebuilding. And right now on the road, I mean, they've been just hemorrhaging points lately. 5 of their last 7 have gone over, but even at a slow pace, 93 pace, and the Warriors have been playing at a 103 pace in their last 10 at home here. So I definitely think this is a good spot for the over. If you can get it around 230, it might get bet up a little bit, but I don't think Toronto's shutting them down the way they held Sacramento in check.
Yeah, it's not the same for sure. It's a bit of a different style to a degree. Although, I mean, to a degree, I mean, a good passing big man was something that the Dubs have had in the past, and you can still give Kevon Looney some love there. But at any rate, I like Toronto to cover about 6.5, 5.5, 5. That's why I think it's getting bet down early. I bet it at 6.5 right when I saw it. And really at this point, I hope this video comes out and you see that it's still about 5 or more, because then I still really like Toronto. And the reason I like it more than a total is just really which Dubs team is going to show up. If it is the team that's been struggling to cover at home and really even to win at home in their last 5, then I don't know, 114 points a game with 114 offensive rating, because they're always going to play at that blistering pace. But I don't know. Like, I guess at the end of the day, to be honest with the total, like, I'd prefer the over, just because don't really look at the over totals for the Dubs in their last 5 home games. Like, I'm not as concerned with them because of the fact that it's been like 245, 236, 232. So like they're all pretty high anyway. And this one, I'm not really even worried about the pace as much, just because of the fact that Toronto's been playing at a super duper slow pace and still kind of going under. But I'm just really impressed with them. And I think my narrative for this game, Nate, and the reason I'm talking about Toronto like this is because as away dogs, what they've been doing, 5-1 in their last 6 against the spread, and 4-2 straight up. And they're just playing teams tough that when it's sort of their back against the wall, and OG's playing for them helps a lot. But it's really mostly about, what like the fact that they're at this point in the season where I don't think they want to blow it up. They don't want to get rid of guys like OG Anunoby, or even Gary Trent Jr. They want to keep it together. And I think against teams that they're, are quality teams, they've sort of been bringing it. So their defensive ratings down to 114 in those last 6, 110 points allowed. Their offensive ratings up to 120, scoring 115 points. All those numbers are a little bit low because they're playing at that 93 pace, but still 4-2 to the over, because they're getting some kind of low totals, to be honest, is also why. I think at times they've had a little bit of a lower total that they get to go over, but they've been averaging 13 made threes on 38% on the season. 10 threes a game on 33%. So that's what you're talking about with those struggles. But, when you have OG in there, at least you have one more guy who's at least a threat to shoot it from the corner. And Gary Trent's been super hot, and Fred VanVleet's finally shooting a little bit better from the horrible start that he had to the season. They are, allowing a few less fast break points, but they still allow a ton, which is what I think we both like when we talk about an over in this one. Is just not even necessarily the pace, it's just transition, because Toronto knows that, like you said, they basically have the worst half-court offense in today's NBA, where you need to be able to have at least 3, if not 4 guys who can make a 3 on the floor at once, and they rarely have more than 3, if not 2 for the most part, that you actually feel is a threat to score. So I think the fast break points is something you can continue to expect. They've been doing a much better job at rebounding as well. 7th in rebound percentage in this stretch on the road, as opposed to 16th on the season. So actually getting some boards there. Christian Koloko and Chris Boucher, but also obviously Siakam being in there. So I mean, on the season, they've had this FU mentality as 9-5 as away dogs against the spread, and basically an even, playing their opponents at an even pace there, minus 0.9 margin of victory that they're failing to win by. So it's basically a pick 'em at that point for them when they're the away dogs. And yeah, you mentioned the stuff that I was going to bring up too, in terms of just all the things that they do well, or at least the key things that you always see Toronto with Nick Nurse's Toronto, I should say, and Pascal Siakam's Toronto. All those, when those two guys basically together are the reason this team is always going to get points off turnovers, second chance points, and fast break points. They're going to crash the glass. They're going to get out in transition, and they're going to get, they're going to basically hawk the ball to be able to get those turnovers. Because once again, they have a putrid, half-court offense that someone like Kawhi Leonard was huge for, because he could bail them out without having to necessarily move the ball too much. So, with and without OG, the defensive ratings are better. They play a bit faster pace though, as well, because of the fact that they get those points off turnovers. So I think that's another. That's really what it comes down to for me, is the points off turnovers to get to that over, but more importantly for them to keep it within 6 points. And last thing I would just mention is they've been done a much better job at defending the 3 as well. As we know, Golden State needs to hit those threes. When OG's on there on the floor, they allow 3 less threes made a game. And last time he wasn't out there when they played earlier this season, the Dubs went for 18 triples in that one without either Gary Trent or OG Anunoby, both guys who will be in this game and defend the 3 really well.
But they also produce on offense. And Andrew Wiggins is questionable. That's going to be a huge pivoting point in terms of, if he's out, you got to like points more, because he is absolutely vital for the Warriors for defending this rangy Raptors team. I mean, you throw out all these things that I don't expect the Raptors to just fold. I don't think that they're a team that of that type, and they do have good numbers as a road dog and etc. But it's really just the Warriors against themselves in some sense that with all these mistakes, all these turnovers, second chance points, and when they're locked in, we've seen them play really well. I mean, we've also seen them just lose against some of the worst teams in the league at home, with or without Steph. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes they just an avalanche of mistakes. But this is their only game until Monday. Last game of 3 at home. They get 2 days off after this. I just think we'll see a pretty sharp Warriors team. And that, to me, means offense. It does mean a much better chance of an over because they're still playing that small ball lineup of different varieties and trying to ramp up the pace. And they're more comfortable in a high-scoring game. They don't want to get into a 106-105 game with Toronto, which is the only time, 4 meetings ago that these teams were even close at the end. It's not usually like a knockdown drag out. It's usually like one team gets an advantage and presses it, and the last 3 meetings between these have been decided by about 15. So that's why I feel okay about Warriors -5 or 6.
That's fair. I'm just using some more recent history to say I think Toronto's going to hit a few more threes, hang around a bit more. And yeah, I guess, in my head, the way I picture that, then, it's closer to like 120, 116 in that range. Still gets you over, but I still think even at an over pace that this team can stay close and hang with the Dubs in this one a little bit better than they did last time. So
I think we're both in agreement here on the Bucks to probably win by double digits against the Halliburton-less Pacers, who are 1-7 straight up, 2-6 against the spread now, 8 games without Halliburton. They're 25th in scoring, 26th in three-point shooting, 26th in net rating. They've been a bad defensive team all year. That's not necessarily going to change with or without him. But, what they are doing is scoring the highest percentage of their points off free throws. Not a good recipe against Milwaukee. Number 1 limiting free throws are in the last 8 or so, number 3 on the season. They're also scoring the second highest percentage of points off the fast break. Again, not really good against a good transition team, and getting the highest offensive rebound percentage. Milwaukee's a great rebounding team. And so there's a reason Milwaukee's won 9 straight in this matchup and covered in 7 of those. The ones they didn't cover, they still won by 9. Including just failing to cover by 0.5 the last time out, thanks to Buddy Hield going nuts from 3. The Bucks still had no real issue because Giannis, if you remember, had that historic line, 50 points on 17 for 21 field goal shooting. He does whatever he wants against this team at 36 points per game, 71% field goal shooting his last 4 against the Pacers, 3 of those in Indy. And I know there's some issues with the Bucks on the road for sure. They are now dead last in offensive efficiency on the road versus 6th at home, but they're second in defense on the road. That's why it's basically flipped 16-8 to the under versus 16-8 to the over at home. 237 is a really high total. The Pacers can get there because they're so bad defensively, but I kind of lean under here along with the Bucks. Just because you look at some of the stuff for down the stretch numbers, like Pacers are good in the fourth quarter, but that was with Halliburton in the last 5 here. They're down to 19th in offensive rating and one of the best defensive ratings, though, 104.7 in the fourth quarter in the last 5. Under in 4 of their last 5 home games. Bucks went under in 6 straight road games before they had that ridiculous 280 total against the Pistons, game played at a 111 pace. But in general, the Bucks are down more around a 98 pace. And you said, rounding into form, we think, they've already won 4 of their last 5. They played Denver's backups and took care of business in that last one. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see the full team, but with Drew and Giannis healthy, with Middleton at least playing a role off the bench and Ingles in there to interchange. The Bucks have closer to their full team, and this is the time of year where we've seen in the past them kind of hit the gas. And it's a division opponent they've just dominated in the division for the last 3 seasons, of averaging a margin of victory of 10 points and 33-10 straight up in division games.
Yeah, you said it, man. I don't know. You said all the best stuff there. I like, and my favorite thing to talk about here is Giannis just owning them, and then he has those teams, and I think what's interesting is there's a kind of a correlation. I think in terms of not having really strong defensive guards, which is interesting because you'd think having like big centers is really important, and it is. And Miles Turner is a shot blocker, but it's really dependent on someone else guarding Giannis well enough that then Miles Turner can come over and block that shot, because that person's sort of already bothering Giannis, and who's going to do that in this game that would have the size and versatility to stay in front of him. It's sort of the same core. Like you said, they haven't gotten better at defense since Halliburton went down. I mean, if anything, they've just sort of, been so bad on offense at times that there isn't necessarily as much of a run and gun need from the other team that as they've been playing these other games, and there's plenty of unders in there at this point. It's partly because they fail to come along, or really, even if it's a little bit closer in some of these games that they played tough. Even when they beat the Bulls, they played them tough. Who knows what's going on with them? They just lost to Charlotte tonight, and then the Suns, another game that they play close without Halliburton. But these other games are still sort of the same style of Indiana basketball, and they're still doing everything the same way. Like, obviously their rebounding hasn't really been affected by Halliburton. Even their assist percentage has only like slightly gone down since he's been out, because that's really the only way that they play well. But part of the reason that they've, you like some of the unders for them, a potential under, is because of the way that they play at the end of the game. Their offensive rating is also really bad at the end of the game, and obviously, you see, if you've been watching them at all, it's a matter of not having anybody. The identity is still the same: pass the ball and move it. But without Halliburton in there to just have the reins, you see guys like Benny Matz, his shooting percentage going down, taking bad shots as well. Buddy Hield, slightly unaffected because he's someone who will pop it and pull it from anywhere. But even he has obviously been seeing a lot more defended threes than he would normally get if Halliburton was in there drawing the defense in. So I've been picking on the Pacers basically since Halliburton went down, because I don't think that there's a spread often big enough against a lot of these teams that would make me scared of it. 7.5 is still confounding me, because I just figured that people would want all of this for the Bucks, and that people would start to ride them. The reason I said starting to round into form is because getting everybody on the court at the same time is pretty important. Giannis has been back for 2 games, but they played the Pistons and the Nuggets, like C squad. Like, they didn't have anybody starting in that game, much less Joker, right? So that was pretty unimpressive, the way that they sort of handled them in that one. And I still want to see a bit more from them, but this is definitely a continuation of what we saw against the Pistons in terms of like a get right game, team in conference and division that they're just going to dominate, because this is what they do, especially not at home or on the road. There's just no talent on the floor for Indiana in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. If it's like that Pistons game and you're talking about over, for sure, if they're going to dominate to that extent. But I mean, I think the total is so high because they hit 251 in the last meeting here. This is one of those 8 games that the Pacers have struggled in. Drew Holiday went off. Bucks had 23 threes, shot 50% from deep, and had 32 assists. And that's at home, though. Like, we talked again about the home road splits. And I mean, while that's encouraging for them to continue to be able to attack this defense, I don't think that's something you bank on in terms of them scoring 130 again, which is why, maybe this total is a little high, but we don't need to complicate it too much. I mean, I think you can take the Bucks at this spread, but maybe, if you are liking what we're saying about the under, then maybe you want to tease the Bucks down, because this could be at 10 points by tomorrow afternoon, and you need to tease it down and get the total up at 241 or so, and feel a little bit better about those two.
Yeah, that's fair. Or, I mean, as my preferred bet would usually be there, the money line parlayed with that total, if you feel that good about it. But I think I'm hitting the Bucks up to about 10, to be honest with you. Right at about double digits is where I might start to feel like that value wanes. But I think that the way that they are coming in, I think they need this game, and it's a division game once again that they seem to show up for. So Giannis to the rescue for everybody who might want to take them at about 8 to 9 points, if that's how high it is when you are seeing this. So Nate, let's go ahead and jump into your first prop for tonight.
It's the rookie of the year, front runner by a mile. Welcome to Miami, though, for your first meeting with the Heat, and they are on a heater, especially on the defensive end, though. 108 defensive rating for Miami. in their last 10, including 104 at home. That is best in the league. And they're playing at a snail's pace, per usual, and giving up just 106 points per game in that span. So for Paolo Banchero, 19.5 points scares me a little bit. I mean, he's usually right around that. I think if you make it 27.5 points, rebounds, assists, I don't think he's going to be getting many assists. I would look for the turnovers prop, which I didn't see up yet, but I just think Miami's going to give him a lot of problems. I mean, he's not rebounding as much because he's playing a lot of the three. In his last 8, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 18 points per game. He's a minus 26. There's just not much efficiency. He's at a 106 offensive rating since mid-December. And his usage rate's down from about 29% on the season to 24.5% because of that lack of efficiency. Orlando's been playing low-scoring games. Miami could completely shut them down. I think there's a lot of guys to look at for the under here, but I think Paolo has some of the more lofty props because of his ability. But I just think this is a really tough matchup for him.
Yeah, I agree. It took you a while to say Paolo. I think you assume everyone knows who you mean by rookie of the year, but yeah, he should. If you're watching this video, hopefully you know Paolo's rookie of the year this year. I hate taking an under on him. He is my guy, but I was looking at unders for somebody in this game for Orlando. As you said, welcome to Miami and that defense and snail's pace that they've been playing at. So that he's got the highest stuff going on out there for this team. And so I think it's fair. The 19.5 points kind of scares me. I think he's been a 20 getter pretty consistently, but he's got a couple of those in recent matchups too, since he came back from injury. So I think this will be a good welcome to this type of team defense that they're going to see from the Heat. Next one up for us, Nate, is Ant-Man. Ant Edwards continues to play super well, to be honest with you, without Cat in there, and a lot of times without Rudy. 3.5 threes over that for him gets you plus 140 on DK. Liked those juicy odds there. And then the 27.5 points for him is about what he's been getting in his last 10, about 27.8, points per game, 5 boards, and about 4.8 assists. His usage is what you love at 33%. Probably a big reason that everything's open for him without Cat. Definitely wasn't open with Cat and Rudy in there, which has been super helpful for him in those last 10. 3.5 made threes in that time at 39.5%. And in his last 3, he's been making about 8. He's made 18 on 36 attempts, good for 50% from deep. 23 plus points at least in his last in 8 of his last 9 games versus Memphis, which I think we're both scared to pick Memphis tonight because we do think that one can be close the way Memphis has been playing on the road and giving up a lot of points. Averaging about 3.5 again, threes made at 53.7% against that Memphis team, and about 26 points per game there. So his home road stuff, which is really good for him. At 30% usage versus 28 when he's on the road. 5 assists per game versus the 3.9 on the road as well. And then 33% from 3 versus 40%. But about, the same amount of makes because he's pulling so many threes at home as well. And his last 5 at home specifically, 30 points a game. That's why you got that prop all the way up at 27.5 at about 4 made threes on 40%. So, dude's balling out for sure. And Memphis, I think, is coming off, a pretty big loss there to the Dubs at that. They really tried to bring it down the stretch. Had taken a lot out of them. So I think we're going to be able to see Ant-Man get his against that tired Memphis team.
Yeah, Memphis has been awful guarding the 3-point line this whole road trip. To see Ant at plus 140 to hit 4 threes is definitely eyebrow raising. I would expect that to have been more like minus 130 the way he's been pulling lately, and especially when he comes in hitting 18 threes in his last 3 at 50%. This is a team he loves to face. And loves to shoot a lot, and the usage is just incredibly high because there's still no Cat for the Wolves. So I guess we're going to close out with a bunch of picks from this Raptors Warriors game because we do like points. We can agree on that. 229.5 is a little bit of a low total. OG Anunoby should be playing here, and I'm kind of shocked at how low his peripheral stats are. I mean, he isn't putting up a ton of numbers out there, but 6.5 rebounds, assists. That's like PJ Tucker territory or something. He's a little bit more of a versatile playmaker than like stand in the corner PJ. Per 36 this year, he averages 5.5 rebounds, 2 assists Also 2 steals, and I'm waiting to see what the steals prop might be here against the Warriors, who are, again, 8th highest turnover rate in the last 2 weeks here. Also giving up the 10th most boards because they're playing at the 3rd fastest pace in the last 10 at home here. So, I mean, OG's going to have to be playing a lot to be a defensive option here. You talked about the importance of him and Gary Trent in this matchup, and he's played at least 32 minutes per game in his last 4 against the Warriors. And again, the peripherals just haven't been there, but I think that will come around. I don't think Toronto's been as much of a freewheeling offense in years past as we've seen here. So I think he'll get probably around 5 rebounds and a couple assists here to get you over this.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel a little bit better about the 2 that I have for this game. Speaking of assists and rebounds, Day, Draymond Green, 15.5 for him. It's minus 105 on DraftKings. I feel like those odds are just really, really good for him to get 16. In his last 4 versus Toronto, 13 boards, 9 assists in 36 minutes per game. And then his last 6 at home, 10 boards, 7 assists per game in about 34 minutes there. And Toronto is allowing the 5th most rebounds per game and 3rd most assists to power forwards this season. Like, it's always been a good matchup for him. You know, he's got to be on the floor to match up with Pascal, who's also averaging like 36.5 minutes a game, this season in general. So he's got to be out there. Clay is one you pointed out to me as well, and I'm also just going to snag and tell people, because 21.5 points for a man who's been averaging 29 his last 11 games at home with a 30% usage. Steph's been in a ton of those games. Like, he's missed, like, I think 4 of those home games that I just referenced. So, like, we talked about Clay the other night as well in terms of against Memphis. Like, you can take both of them. Clay's numbers have not diminished since Steph came back. Nobody can diminish Clay's numbers because his usage and his shooting will always be that high if he's on the floor, and they want him to do that. 5 made threes on 12 attempts in his last 11 at home. So the 3.5 made threes on DK is at minus 135. Maybe you want to take an alternate there and get it to some pretty nice plus odds around plus 110 or so for him to make the 5 on that one. That starts to get a little bit scary because he's not Steph Curry, and almost anybody not named Steph Curry is scary to take an over 4.5 made threes kind of prop. But for Clay, like, it's obvious that they feel like he's almost a guarantee to make 4, and they really don't want you to take that bet. The points at plus money for him to get 22 is like, I don't know, y'all are tripping in my opinion. I know OG's back, but it's still Klay Thompson who can shoot from all over.
Yeah, and the Raptors are giving up 43% from deep in their last 3 here. I think Fred VanVleet, if he's healthy enough, will be chasing Curry a lot, forcing him to give it up. And yeah, Clay's been – it's really just a matter of confidence, I think, with Clay. And he seems to have gotten that while Steph was out, and now he's continued to be kind of the Clay of old, shooting at home and really thriving off that crowd. So I do like the Klay Thompson and the Draymond picks. If you want to go that route instead of the weird OG pick, more power to you.
Cool. Yeah, we're in agreement there. And that is all the time we have for you guys. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Check out the other couple videos we have for you on this Friday. And until we see you next, happy betting.